Well, welcome to Scaling Tech Dojo, the podcast for CEOs, founders, and managing partners navigating their rapidly evolving tech landscape. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that's foundational to leveraging AI. It's data. My guest is David Carmell, the visionary behind DataRocket, a company that's tackling the complex challenge of making enterprise data truly AI ready. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mark, thanks for inviting me. Great to be here. And I appreciate all you do
You're
because
welcome.
most of us don't have a license on brains. And it's always nice to be able to put good information and content elsewhere. Thank
Good.
you.
Yeah. Well, David, I tell you what, your journey into Data Rocket, as you mentioned when we talked the other day, wasn't through a traditional engineering path, but rather through identifying a critical gap. You described how you saw a different way of thinking about data, especially when it comes to AI. Data Rocket is addressing what you called, data's missing piece technology, aiming to bring disparate data sources together in a seamless, clean, and AI-ready format. And this is crucial, for any company looking to harness the power of AI effectively. So, you've made a compelling point for what many people or what many perceive as, AI problems are actually data problems. Can you elaborate on this, especially in the context of enterprise IT, where legacy systems and unstructured data are so prevalent?
Sure, I'll be happy to. Thank you for the kind introduction. As an aside, Mark, one of the things that I do is I don't get hung up too much on terms. I look at
Problem.
problems and see what we can solve. And a lot of times I find that semantics and linguistics and all those type of things will sometimes stand in the way. And what does it need to do to solve a problem? What is the problem? How do we identify it? Is there ways of working? Is there a way to looking at it differently? And that's one of the things that I've tried to do here is what if the world's looking at data incorrectly? Or maybe there's a different way of doing so. And I think that's where you're leading towards. Um, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article around in mid 2024 said that this problem just in legacy mainframes. Some of your audience may not be old enough to remember that there are still old line legacy mainframe type systems that 90% of major corporations and banks are still using today, and insurance companies, the federal government. The US government alone is an $80 billion a year problem. So literally, they have to have operators that this is data that doesn't even go to the cloud yet, and no one's been made to get it there. So from my perspective, and the Wall Street Journal called this a $1.2 trillion problem no one wants to talk about. So it's a pretty big problem.
Yeah.
And particularly when people are retiring today and walking away from these legacy type systems. And plus in the cloud, when they talk about all this type of data, but 90% of it's incompatible with AI. Now, to your point, what does this mean to your listeners and readers and CEOs or whoever is out there? Well, when they think of AI, they're just thinking AI, and they think when it's not working properly, they're having an AI issue. But really, I would argue they're having a data issue. So, and you also have to think of AI as probably, it's been around a very long time. It's been around over 20 years. So I'm sure hopefully I'm not telling you something you don't know, but just in case some of your listeners are unaware. So they may have been using it unbeknownst to themselves, but now it's really on a scale that's never been seen before. And that's one of the exciting parts, and it's also one of the most more dangerous things. But when you put it all together, is what they're seeing is when it doesn't work, it's not really an AI problem. As I said, I think it's a data problem. And there's really
Yeah.
two reasons why. One, it could be for nefarious reasons that someone actually who's been working on the software and these type of things have created a design result that didn't match up to what the listener may know as an actual fact, if you get what I'm saying, right? And so forth. Or someone's picture may look differently and they don't understand why. Well, is it a fault of the software? I would argue that's for nefarious reasons. The other is it can be the fault of the software because AI is very fickle. It's probably the most fickle, temperamental. You have to do it its way or the highway that you ever seen. You're gonna say, how is that possible? Well, data comes in all sizes, forms, chunks, different degrees.
Yeah.
And Like we did in Iran, we dropped that bunker buster to break up all to get to that nuclear, right? That's way down there that nobody can penetrate and read. Well, that's the type of issues that companies are having trouble with. And even these great breakthrough companies, the hyperscalers, the open AIs of the world and so forth, they are spending hundreds of billions of dollars to try to bunker bust this data into usable sources so they can get it to their people, out there and their customers. So our view is, why do you have to use brute force? Can't there be a better way? There has to be a simpler, more seamless way. That's what the internet was really based on. That's what really technology is based on. That's what engineers like yourself have always looked for a way is not what's the hardest way, right? Or what's the easiest path, but how do we make it easy and most seamless for our customers, right? And for our own people to utilize. And that's one of the goals that I've tried to do. And not unsurprisingly, is it's not a very easy problem to solve, particularly on the legacy mainframe side. And so that's one of the huge points. There's these companies, large enterprises that have these mainframe computers, and they're stuck between two worlds, the old world and the new world. And they're having a very difficult way of navigating. And people have been trying to migrate this old data to the cloud for a very long period of time, and they've been unsuccessful. There's a lot of companies out there that said we did it, but at 500 million to $1 billion of cost, I'm not sure how successful they've really been. And at the same time, can they continue to do it every single day, 24/7? And those are all the things that we're trying to provide right now and look at it in a different way. So why does it have to be so difficult? Why does it have to be so hard? It's because a lot of times we make it hard, and that makes it difficult for people maybe to enter. But we have looked at things a completely different way. And it's actually kind of exciting now being out of the weeds and getting very close to bringing this to fruition. And we realize that we have to be that much better than everybody else and that we need to be ready to scale, because if we're correct in our assumptions, are correct in our testing, and correct in all our data, and correct in what we're trying to do, there should be a very large need for our product. And if we're not ready to scale, then we might as well not just show up.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, data is a very important piece of it. Um, so you shared the anecdote, we were talking the other day, the anecdote about Microsoft approaching you after a conference, essentially confirming, your thesis that enterprises weren't buying enough AI because of data readiness. Was that the pivotal moment when you realized that Data Rocket needed to be built not just as a feature, but as a standalone solution?
That's a good question, Mark. I think you give me a little bit too much credit here, but I'm a big believer in a nudge. And I would say that that impromptu, by accident discussion I had with some of the Microsoft people in New York at a conference, and they wanted to speak, gave me that nudge. And I answered some of their questions. They couldn't figure out why the big guy wasn't buying enough AI from them. And when I explained my thesis, Data Rocket wasn't even in my mindset at the time. So, but then they were the ones that said, you got to keep this going. And they were kind enough to provide the tools to get us on Azure and provide the support that we really needed. So that's the story behind Data Rocket. And really, on my flight home from New York City, if you go on our website, I don't mean to do this sounds seamless. Well, it is seamless, but a self-serving plug, but at datarocket.com, it's it.com, Data Rocket. You'll see a video. It's on there, a very short one. Well, that was the sketch. The original basis of this video is a sketch I had in my head of what I wanted us to do and accomplish. Because as an engineer, you can't just say you want to save the world. God, I hate that phrase, but you know what I'm saying. You got to come up with something. You have to have a thesis. You write it down. You can hand it, right? You can map it out. You can hand it to great engineers like yourself, and who can look at it and go, maybe this guy actually knows what he's talking about a little bit, right? And so forth. So that was really the basis of it. For me to see the playing field, I had to put my vision, what I thought, now starting in a piece of paper, if you get what I'm saying. Literally just sketched it out, and that's what became the basis of Data Rocket. And um, the thesis has been really nothing has changed. It's only gotten better. The issue is now, can we deliver, right? And that's one of the things I'm excited about to be able to do and talk to you today about. But for you people out there who are worried about AI and what it's going to do, and like what we've talked about in the past and what Microsoft is bringing forward, is you have to make sure that you want it to work for you and not the other way around. Think about it that way.
Right.
You if you're gonna ride a bull, are you gonna have to let the bull take you, just throw you around the place? Or are you gonna try to, you know, corral that, and you know what I'm saying? It's a beast. And if you let it control you, then it's one thing. That's why information and great data is the most important thing that we're all going to be able to bring together when working for AI with AI.
Yeah. Well, let's just I'm going to go and switch into more
Sure.
like challenge of legacy and unstructured data. You've highlighted the immense challenge of mainframe legacy data, and the
Mhm.
fact that 90% of cloud data is unstructured and not clean enough for AI. So, how does DataRocket approach these deeply entrenched issues, and what's the fundamental shift in thinking that DataRocket brings to solving them?
We quite frankly, I don't see why there's a distinction at all between data. It should be one. Or as we try to say here, data is just data until it's clean enough for AI. But even if you go back, whether you talk about legacy, mainframe, structured, unstructured, semi-structured, I mean, you can keep going on. Those are
Yeah.
words. It's still data, and they all still have metadata behind it and substrates and all those things that are underneath it. So just because you see a PDF, there's a whole bunch of stuff you're not seeing behind the scenes that allow you to, that put it together. And then if you
Right.
take so the real challenge is me perhaps is not really on the small end of things. And but think about these larger enterprises that may have 1 terabyte of data is a lot for any individual. But you're talking about some of these huge companies that have over a terabyte. That's 1,000 terabytes of information. It's massive.
Yeah, it is.
How are they going to bring it together? How are they going to secure it? Well, I would argue that data is really the key to everything. Your cybersecurity will be better if you have better control and full control of your language models, right? Your all your data, because one of our thesis and goal is that right now a lot of organizations are using the biggest cesspool in the world, which is the internet, for a lot of their language model, a lot of their language model training. But if you can control all your information in and out, and it's clean and ready, what you'd rather do, and I'll make a water analogy, would you rather drink clean water or would you rather drink polluted water? And that you can control the contents, right? And all this. So that's what we really can help. And I think that one of the keys of the future is going to be these companies and organizations that control their own language models. And if you can do that, that means everybody's going to be on the same page. Everybody's going to have trust and confidence in the data and what you're going to be able to do for your people and your employees and your customers and all those type of things is going to be incredible. Considering that most companies still can't use more than 15 to 20% of their data effectively, there is a lot of upside in this, and they're spending inordinate amounts of money to do this. And that, Mark, this is what really excites me, and the ability to be on shows like yourself. It also allows me to talk out loud and get outside the weeds, if you know what I'm saying too. Uh, and, but at the same time, being able to learn from people like yourselves and others is just great. Every day is a new thing. You learn about something new. You pay attention to it. How does this fit? How doesn't it fit? And I try to look at our products as more modular. Can it be used for other purposes? Can we move it elsewhere? Um, let's face it today, if you're going to do business with these larger organizations, they're going to want to be on their own premises, right? They
Yep.
not going to ask you to hold all their data and do it. No, that's just not going to happen. So we had to be thinking ahead like that. And we also had to overcome skepticism, probably from people like yourselves, engineers, right? They're saying, "What the heck? We've been working on this, all this time, and things." So, um, this is what we've been looking forward to. And with people with data, you have to understand that is the real key to where you want to go in the future. Everything we're talking about today, even from your podcasts, from your call centers, your chat boxes, all these types of things, that's data.
Yeah.
And how do you make it work for you? How do you bring it down? How do you flag things right away? There's certain so many things. Companies will say, "Well, we're 10 times better than we were 5 years ago based on the information and data we have." And I'd argue that you're probably closer to 50 times away from where you possibly could be based on if you're only getting 15 to 20% effectiveness out of it. So,
Right.
and, Mark, you and I talked about this, but until people realize that it's something that needs to be treated as well as their customers and their employees and their family members, you better get there because that's what's holding the key to your future.
Yeah, yeah, it's a big false negative without the full picture of the data. But you mentioned, you talked about the bunker buster analogy for legacy data. So how does Data Rocket penetrate, and transform this data without the brute force methods that are proven, so costly and often ineffective for large organizations?
Um, let's see how I can say with this without revealing a proprietary information. Uh, Great
Unders-
question.
yeah,
We appreciate the answer to it. Very engineeringly well done. So kudos to you. I would say this where if you're thinking about how companies or governments are doing it today with these brute force, more compute power, right? More military power, right? Because they got to break up all this stuff. We kind of go on our tippy toes and come in and say, why can't we do this seamlessly and recreate the data in a certain way and redo certain things so you don't have to use this type of force? And can we use certain technology or can we I'll ask the question before I try to program it, develop it and things. And why can't we do it like this? Can we use this? Can we do that? And we could do it. This is what I want to do. And once I understand the boundaries that we have, like working with certain, like on Azure or AWS or those type of things, well, they may not be fast enough. How do we get more horsepower through this, right? How do we get it going? So, it's a completely way of looking at it differently. If I showed you our blueprints and stuff, people may say, "What the heck were you thinking about?" But I try to think about like, what are the barriers the data is facing? What are the barriers that these corporations are facing? What is it that can't get them over the finish line or even get them close to a finish line? And thirdly, what is internally set up now that needs to be changed for us to be able to do what we need to do without spending a ton of money because we're self-financed, the Bank of Carmel, my wife and myself. And so we have to start thinking smarter, more cagier for lack of a better term, and also simpler. you know, what are some of these things that can make it happen? I mean, these abstract or out the life things that you used to see years ago on cartoons, remember like the Jetsons and all those things have now become real life today, right? So someone must have been 30 to 40 years ahead of their time. So the real quickly, to answer your question and get to the point, is we do things completely opposite of what's being done today, leveraging the technology and availability of things that are not there, putting it together in ways that haven't been done before. And also, most important thing, which AI cannot do, cannot be creative. It cannot think for you. It
Yeah.
needs to think over. So if you're facing a barrier, if you're facing something that's not working, can you think 2 steps ahead or even 5 steps ahead to see where you want to go? Because as long as I can see where I want to go, then and if I can't code it myself, if you know what I mean, per se, I can hand it off to someone else who has a lot more expertise in something that could help me, you know, get it the way there. So if you have a very clean path, a very great vision that's really reliable, then the rest of it is just kind of tinkering around and making it go. And that's one of the fun things. But also, suffer as fickle as anything comes. The more enterprise grade and world class you get, and different things like that. It's really fine tuning because this machine has got to really hum in incredible levels that haven't been done before. Everything literally has to work I was just talking to my wife about it last night and just saying this one little piece of code that may be off a tiny bit that can throw off a whole system. You know what I mean? Just a tiny. And so when you were trying to make people like yourself happy, right? So one day when you could be able to take data and do whatever you want with it, right? And turn your greatness to even greater superpowers. So what we have done is we have a I talk about superheroes, and it kind of bugs me because I used to hate when people talked about that, but then I realized that I am one of the great hypocrites you'll ever meet. And I could do a whole podcast on how I am a hypocrite. But in any event, what is a superpower that we can bring to our customers, to the rest of the world? What is a superpower we can put within our own code that can just do things that haven't been done before? And it's not thinking necessarily in those terms. It's really like this. We're not going to solve this problem, right? How do you how are you going to get a 1 terabyte of data across the finish line, let alone out of a old line system without being able to think about things and doing things in a different way? How are you going to it's so seamless that it can go through and all the customer has to do is get it to you and touch a button and the rest you can do yourself. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
we it's the back end of things that have to really be done and engineered for lack of or architectured for all. And believe me, I had an awakening, a real awakening. I've always been able to design very well, but man, architecture is so pivotal, as you well know, right? Is so vital to what you do. If you don't get that house, your back house end in order, it's very, very difficult to even come across to scale on in ways that maybe have not been done before.
Yeah. Well, let's this is good. A good track here. As
Mhm.
far as your unique approach and value proposition, you've described Data Rocket as a command center, that returns data in a state companies had never seen before. Can you walk us through, just in layman's terms, how Data Rocket achieves this transformation, and maybe touch also on what does it mean for a company's data to be clean enough for AI?
Yeah, sure. One of our goals, or one of my goals, is to make it so easy and simple to do business with us. Okay. And when people think about data, think about it's very complicated, right? How are you going to be able to do this? So when you talked about our command center or mission control, I really wanted to make it set up like it was like a launch, rocket with an don't get me wrong. And also I wanted to set it up. It was so easy for myself to do. And quite frankly, right? And so at the end of the day, all we really need is for the customer to be able to get their data to us. We set it up, right? All they have to bring it to us, or we can extract it from them, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they don't have to do any intervention except for they can preview it, if you know what I mean, and look at it, and we can show them how it's done. And then we return it, and we return it to them a way that however they want. They want it delivered to their front door, their front hall, right? Throughout the house, wherever they wanted to go, whatever language. And all together as one or separated however they want. And people have to realize when they're giving us old world data to like mainframe, it's not going back to the mainframe. It's going to their cloud. It's all part of their system. It can be fully integrated. And once people realize that data is data, it will be, and it's clean, trustworthy, that's when you're going to start humming because trust, as you well know, is a secret.
Yeah.
It's an important ingredient to business, to
Yeah.
relationships, and things like that. And I don't think a lot of people have a trust regarding AI today. I don't think they have a lot of trust when it comes to information. And so this is a way for you, either as a solopreneur, all the way up to these large companies, to control the ins and outs into your own business, into your own world. And if you can have the cleanest data, that's then that can be utilized with AI. So think of AI more like a Stradivarius violin, right? It is probably the most fickle instrument you'll ever touch. No, it's like, man, you're not going to let people like me like mess around with a Stradivarius, correct? So the answer is
Yes.
yes. Well,
Yeah.
AI is even more is like 10 times that. So if you can, AI is giving us all what it wants. The company that can realize it and not fight it and deliver it in ways that AI wants that will satisfy it will no longer have the most fickle date in the world. So if you get my analogy. So from your perspective, Mark, and mine and all that, I haven't thought in grandiose terms and like, improving the world and all that. But I also realize that one of the most exciting things, and particularly when you start seeing it work and your plans come to life and the vision really becoming reality is this can really do a lot of good for a lot of people. And that's what really excites me.
Oh, it is exciting. Hey, so you've got different product offerings like the 4000, 4002, 4004. Can you just briefly explain the differences and how, they cater to various data environments from cloud to mainframe?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And this is where my marketing hat came on. Um, Sometimes you have to put a number to you got to actually give it a product number for people to understand what the heck you're talking about, right? You have a
Yeah.
complex subject. So I decided our 4000 is is dealing with legacy mainframe by itself. Okay.
Okay.
4002 is with cloud-based data. And a 4004, for lack of a better term, is where you can combine both legacy and cloud all together in one and return it that way. We have a 365 product as well, which
Okay.
will allow you to, which I hadn't thought about until later, which was like, okay, you do all this in one day. I'm just making something up. Uh, what about 5 seconds later? So you have to have a product that makes sure that the ends right they want to bring in will be enough for the rest of the company and people as well. And we got to the 4000 series because I love to read, and that's where you learn. And I read Isaacson's book. I don't know, it was on Musk or Jobs or one of them that was talking about technology. And the Intel 4004 was the microprocessor that changed the world. That's allowed us to be able to do what we're doing today. So if you call it plagiarism or whatever it is, that's how I came up with the 4004 for us, which is the combined product that hopefully will change and allow people to do what they never thought possible before. And if you think about it, I look at it this way. I don't know about you. Well, maybe you're an engineer and have probably thinking about these things all the times. But when I went to bed, I wasn't thinking about an iPod or a minivan. But when I woke up and saw them, I was like, whoa, like changed like all of a sudden. So how can you talk about and visualize and bring to life something that nobody can ever think about before? And that's one of the issues we have. So that's how we got the product naming, quite frankly, like the 4000, 4002. So now people can segmentize it. And also, when John showed us that there was 1,000 songs that you can hang on your sleeve, right? That changed the game. When Iacocca showed us with the minivan that, whoa, the doors open sideways, the back opens this way. You can do this with kids, groceries, storage, right? It, these created entire new industries. They're avalanches for business. Right? I mean, it was incredible. So
I have.
this is one of the things, but we have a rule of two, or I always have is with people is, when they come in is how do you think about them 2 steps ahead? Are there 2 jobs ahead that you can move? And that's how you continue growing your company. Can
Yeah.
you take a look at your product that way with us? We just to come up with another data product that was the same or maybe a little better than anybody else is something I really wasn't interested in and was a way to solve a problem. It also could potentially be beyond my piquing my curiosity, but it has taxed everything I have possible, but it has opened myself up to whole new ways of how you relate, of how you can bring things together. Software has really taught me that logistics is my background and distribution is that process and flow are so key. And without great data and systems behind it, it's impossible to do. And that's what we base everything on is I may not know you, but I've already thought about your process, your flow, and how we can make it even better without even stepping in the way. Because most people don't need 1,000 David Carmels to hang around like a bad smell. If you, I'm being a little derogatory here, but it's just a self-deprecating humor. But
Yeah.
realistically, they want to take it, move on, and be able to do what they do. So think about a relay race where you pass a baton, right?
Yep. Yeah.
We are we are the ones that can pass that baton, that data baton, that information baton, that people at the baton, so you guys can win that final leg of that race, right? And if
Yeah.
you think about we as Americans, Mark, we always seem to have the 4 fastest runners when it comes to like the Olympics, right? For these relay races, but we hardly ever win these relay races because we do terrible at passing the baton. Either we drop it, either we have to slow down to take it, but that doesn't work. Our customers don't want it to be that way. It has got to flow like an incredibly fast, seamless machine that people go, "Oh, what's so complicated about that?" I can tell you it's really complicated. So, but as long as you make it not so complicated for them and it's button touching and things like that, then you can let them get on to great. And there's a lot of data scientists out there that are doing things today that they wish they could be doing, but unfortunately, due to data not being clean enough has forced them to really use unclean data and having them to be in the data cleaning business when that's not really where they want to be.
Yeah, well, let's talk about just impact and outcomes for enterprises. You've spoken about the massive financial implications of current data management, citing you mentioned about the 80 billion problem for the federal government. What kind of tangible savings and competitive advantage can enterprises expect by implementing Data Rocket's solutions?
Well, I wish you didn't give me such a high hanging curveball, but I'll do my best to answer it for you. Thanks for the question. From a From an efficiency standpoint, just from a spend and cost savings, every mainframe, just from a legacy standpoint, is probably $35 billion a year in cost when you're all in, plus the energy and all those other type of things. So let's assuming that you do have a goal to get to the cloud or become a hybrid solution where you can put your data together and get the best of both worlds. You can't do that right now. We'll be allow you to do that, and it will save you a tremendous amount of time, particularly from a legacy side where you have these 60-year-old machines. Well, a lot of people are 60-year-olds and up and they're retiring now. And there's a shortage of people that can maintain these pieces of equipment and so forth. So these CEOs have been kicking the can down the road. For those community banks out there have been relying on these for these data management companies, this will now finally give them a chance to show how great they are at their own business because they can now control their information. Once you get control of your information, can you put a dollar value on it? Yeah, we can tell you that we'll be able to save you. Now, I like to put it a different way. You'll be able to save because you've made this decision. Once you've committed to this decision, then you're going to be able to do things you never thought possible before. You're going to be able to use AI in ways possible before. And you hear about all these layoffs are going on about AI. Is it poor because of poor hiring practices in the past and they're cleaning the house? Or is it a fact that they can't get their data working in ways to really allow their people to be superstars? In other words, 1+1 really does equal 2 when you have really good people and really good systems and information. Well, we are the bridge and the accelerant to that in a hurry. So how do you put a value on that too? Well, we are paying a legacy debt because every time you're not using your data efficiently or you're inefficiently or using those legacy systems, the government does pay $80 billion every year, year on year. What if they didn't have to pay as much on that, right? You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
those are numbers, but I like to look at what it can do as far as potential can do. What it can do is throughput. What it could do about bringing people even closer together. I mean, if you could really get rid of these fiefdoms of like companies that these they don't even know where they pack their information. They can tell you all they want, but just being able to get your hands around information you never had before in ways never thought possible. So now you can really get these teams working in unison as opposed to people checking your keyboard strokes so they can try to make AI even better to try to get rid of you because you win with people, you win with brains. And what the young people today, I say something pretty controversial is you haven't been taught to think. You need experience. In a lot of places, you haven't had the manual labor jobs or some of these other type of jobs it takes to make these products that go into it and get on the shop floor and do these type of things that I've had the experience of doing myself. But for those that can create, that's great. But you still need people that can do and be the 10th man. The Israelis have a philosophy that you have to have always someone challenging you. If 9 people are in agreement, there always has to be a 10th that will play that devil's advocate, that will disagree. And this is a great way of bringing discussion back in. This is a way of getting everybody's cards on the table because now nobody's hiding anything. But at the same time, you can protect your most valuable information better than ever before. because if your data is clean, that's going to reduce your risk because
Yeah.
the cyber criminals are coming in on you are only taking advantage of your vulnerabilities. And if you can get your data into ways and positions and strengths you want, it's going to make your cybersecurity vendors even better. And it's going to make you as a company even better. And it's going to make your stakeholders even feel more secure. So back to your question, Mark, how do you put a dollar value on that? I'll leave it to the CEOs of the world and the bean counters and the CFOs, but we will be accretive to earnings right away. And they should embrace this. This is something that a visionary or person with vision is saying, if I could just do this, now you can do this. Now you're going to be able to do this. And that's what we're excited about to be able to do and hopefully prove as well. And believe me, every day I try to hope our product fails. And
Yeah.
people, you know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yeah. So beyond the cost savings,
Mhm.
and don't want to undermine that at all.
Mm-mm.
And the insights that can be gained, from this data. So, how does, and I'm just kind of leading into it here, is how does, having 95 to 100% of clean AI ready data, as opposed to the current 15 to 20%, empower companies to make better decisions, improve customer service, and unlock new opportunities. And I think you've answered the question. If you want to elaborate on that at all, but I
Sure.
mean,
Maybe I'll play podcast host for a minute and ask you. But um, thanks for asking it. But let's look at it from the basic level. Da- Data is freedom, and if you're free to
oh,
move into the cabin and having access to the tools you need, a lot of people think about sitting at your home desk or just corporation or wherever you are. There's certain barriers you have to getting the job done. At some places, they're bigger barriers than others because may more have bells and whistles and things like that. But at the same time, how do those bells and whistles work when you're in a grossly imperfect system? So now, when you control the means, the ins and the outs, and you can control the cleanliness, and you now have information that you can trust, that your people can trust, it's only going to make people you're thinking about where they work or where they're employed, where their stakeholders and how they get involved, how proud they are. It great because now I'm not fighting the company to try to do my job. I'm actually given the tools to do it. And also from a training perspective, you can now row with a lot of people on the same page, right? You're all getting together in the same way. So, all those type of things. And from a business mark, as you probably well know, is in planning ahead about moving people around. Is there really barriers to entry? Are there barriers to knowledge? Are there what is stopping people from gaining the experience and levels of responsibility they need to move forward? Well, I would argue that data and certain things like that has been a huge impediment to this.
oh, it
So,
is. Yeah, moving from, 15 to 20 to 95 to 100, it's a total paradigm shift. I mean, it's insights that, yeah, you had no clue, right? I mean, and so to piece it all together, and that's what the AI, tools give you, but you got to have clean data. But yeah, hey, you had mentioned also the concept of data stocracy. I like that. How do you see data rockets, helping companies overcome that, internal resistance to change and embrace a more data-driven AI-enabled future? I think you've probably touched on that too.
well, let's see. Without shooting myself in the foot, I think the top people at the C-suite should take an extraordinary interest in data and what it means to their own personal careers, themselves as fiduciaries, and make sure that there are not other people in your organization in the way of your vision and where data can lead you to. So if you have the people at the top giving the right signals, right, and the right leadership,
Yeah.
then will fall greatly into place versus there are places saying, well, I have 5,000 people working in this department like this. I'm very happy the way it is. And so that's a democracy. Those are the people that you have to um, either appease, show there's a better way, or create such a compelling, overwhelming
Yeah. There you go.
that you're going to be able to show that others are using it? And how would you like to be the last person on the train that is not using lies, who doesn't have the winning data solution and so forth? So it's
Yeah.
not, just want to make one thing clear here. It's not for us to tell you how to use it. We just
Right.
want you to be able to use it and be able to go and have just go to town. And that's what our real goal is with our customers.
Yeah, the freedom that, clean data could get, having access to it, the clean for AI. But so just as far as the future of data and AI, looking ahead, how do you envision, Data Rocket's evolving to meet the future demands of AI, especially as language models, become even more sophisticated, So, what's next on the horizon for Data Rocket?
I think we've only scratched the surface, quite frankly. So that's what's kind of exciting. And I think what's next for us is to first get the traction we need. And secondly, is to realize that we've also built a product here and I designed it so it's modular, meaning it can be used for other type of purposes and things as well. But I think in the area of security, I think there's a huge, some of the things that we are doing that are really game changing in our software and our behind the scenes, I think can be brought into the security field as well. Yes, we will make your data better secured because the fact of how you're utilizing it. But I'm talking about actually in the world of cybersecurity and things like that. There's also, I think we can do to bring that forward. I also think that there's so many other people out there that we could also partner with, you know what I mean, and joint venture with, and things like that, that have products that we could easily work together with or improve upon. And I think when people check their egos at the door, a lot of great things can happen. And um, I've never worried about being the smartest person in the room. And I just think the most important thing is how you solve a problem. Can you solve it? How do you get there? And what else is there to do that you want to move on to do? And when it comes to data and security and getting it down to the little guy, right, to the grassroots level, that is what will excite me. I love small business. My passion is with them. But I've also been an assistant chairman and CEO at a large corporation too, and have had sizable responsibilities myself. So if you really think about it, data is like blood for all of us. This is how
Yes.
our external blood, right? Really, I don't mean to be goofy about it, but I'm just telling you that it's our air. This is what
Yeah.
will be the key to all of our futures. And whether I'm sitting here at my desk trying to figure out something, how to solve a problem or solution, or I should be able to have the tools at my command that anybody else should be able to do, even from the larger players. Now, I understand the governments of certain securities, you know what I mean, and national security and
Right.
different things. But realistically, my national security should be as important as the government's too. And we should all be able to chime in and we should all be able to be utilizing the best information possible to make things better for all of us. And so we don't have to be on all these divided teams. I mean, if you rely, uh, I wrote an article on, I don't mean to get off track, but on TikTok. TikTok is probably one of the most incredible algorithm mankind I've ever seen. I mean, it is incredible. How do you get something so addicting that is so wrong that is gives so many you can start out with a bias already what position you want. And when you can make sure that 80-20% and 80-20 bias always happens on every video, right? And what's done. Uh, you know, is that good, clean information? Well, I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing things that have been beyond the pale. And I'm just saying for all of us, the more we can trust data, the more we can trust reliability, the more we can trust others, the more we can be safeguards of our own future, the better off we're all going to be. And that's where I see us leading to. So whether it's security, whether it's information, whether it's putting smile on people's faces, whether it's saying when that light bulb goes on in your head saying, what? I can now do this. You know what I mean? I we don't have a license on brains, but I just want to make sure that you can get a license on brains because if you have a passion from what you think is the smallest thing in the world to some big idea for whatever holding you back, the barriers will be gone because you're going to have information, you're going to have access, you're going to have so much. future availability that hopefully it'll be so obvious what is the crap, excuse the expression, but we need to weed this out. And as a society, we need to do this. And as corporates, we need to even do it better because you're on one team, and that's team that your customers, your vendors, your stakeholders, your greater community, and what you want to give back. And at the end of the day, are you happy what you're giving back to the rest of society, to the rest of your stakeholders and all that? I'll leave that with you. And I think that's a huge value add that we can bring because when
Yeah.
you can bring all that together and make people like you smile, people, engineers like yourself that are usually grizzled and you know what I mean, and skeptical. And skepticism is good, but when you can start winning out and getting that grimace to like, hmm, to a smile to whoa, that's
Yeah.
when you're gonna win.
Yeah. So for a, for a CEO or CTO,
Mhm.
listening, who's overwhelmed by the complexity of their data and the promise of AI, what's the single most important piece of advice that you would offer them today?
Help is coming soon. That is from, my perspective, but also where they couldn't have become a CEO or a CTO today without having certain skills to get there themselves. So, think about simplifying the playing field, right? Think about being able to get the tools together that you want. To be able to validate that notorious gut that you have, that gut feel, right? That you that even can even put it on overdrive, that can even get that brain going even faster, will even make you more valuable to your team, to your stakeholders.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen. So you can either fight it or say, do you realize how great this is for us, for me, for our organization I'm trying to build? Because once you have that opportunity to realize that you have the freedom, that the only boundaries you want to put on is cloud-based boundaries, right? And not mindset-based boundaries. This is a great place that we're all going to have a chance to be in. And get ready because it's going to come like a tidal wave.
That help is coming. Excellent. Well, I'll tell you what, David, it's been an incredibly insightful conversation here. For our listeners, who want to learn more about you and Data Rocket, where can they find you?
Well, for the last 6 months, I've been in the weeds, so I haven't really well seen. But the answer, in all seriousness, you can go to our Data Rocket. That's DATAROCKIT.com. And there's also a video on, there's some videos on there. As I said, the first one is what my original sketch was, but I was kind enough. I mean, the cloud people were kind enough to invite us in September to speak to their audience as one of the rising startups. And you'll see our approach on data. I think it's 10 minutes, and we told what happens if the world is not looking at data properly. So it's a pretty good thesis and fun. Also, I'm on LinkedIn, and just feel free to drop in. I come on podcasts. I do write, and always listening, always happy to get feedback and also learn more. I did most of the talking today, but I try to have a perspective. I have 2 ears and one mouth, so I try to keep those in those ratios. And I give you great credit for being a terrific host and giving people like myself an opportunity to talk. But most importantly, it's an opportunity to be challenged, to learn more. And also by asking good questions, they're also challenging you to get outside of the bullshit field, if excuse the expression, the BS field, and to bring things down to readily speakable, understandable terms. Because most CEOs are not trained engineers, right? And so forth.
Right.
And how do you make something that's so complex simple? And that's what one of the things that we had to do to begin with is how do you do this? And at the end of the day, it's people like you that help me think better. It's help hopefully you think better. And collectively, when we all put our heads together, that's an unbeatable team and premise.
Yeah, well, it's been incredibly insightful, and thank you again. And we'll look at you online.
Yeah, and absolutely. feel free to reach out. I hopefully they do. And if you